Affirmative action is back in the news. Dateline West Point, and this is a story at NPR. I'm sure this is going to sprout legs in the next couple of days. Group sues West Point seeking to ban affirmative action in admissions. Now, this was featured on All Things Considered. This came out the 19th, yesterday. This is by Nina Totenberg. It says there are Students for Fair Admissions, the conservative group that earlier this year won a U.S. Supreme Court ban on affirmative action programs in higher education, is now suing the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. The suit is aimed at eliminating all racial considerations in the service academy's admission program. Now, last June, its landmark opinion banning affirmative action in colleges and universities, the Supreme Court explicitly declined to extend its ban on affirmative action to the service academies. And that would make sense, because you want to have the best people possible in the military, no matter who they are. White, Hispanic, Black, Asian. And I've got some stats for you, going back to World War II. The court said that, quote, "the special considerations raised by the military had never been addressed by the lower courts. The military has long maintained that the nation's security depends on having a diverse officer corps or corps that is ready to lead an increasingly diverse fighting force." Well, just because you have diversity doesn't make it the best team around. You want the best qualified people for the job. I learned that lesson the hard way during the Vietnam War, when racial tensions caused serious problems between the overwhelmingly white officer corps and the significantly minority enlisted men. Now, this is where things get interesting. So, Nina says here that more than 300,000 Black Americans served in Vietnam. That's true. Though only about 12% of the U.S. population, Black service members were 16.3% of the armed forces and made up to 25% of enlisted men in the Army, but only 2% of officers across all branches. Now, I dug through this morning, just to make sure that I was prepared for the video. And during Vietnam, 35,000 Asian Americans served between 1955 to 1975. But you had 80,000 Hispanics who also were enlisted in the Army at that time. But here's a shocker for you. If you go back to World War II, in World War II, you had 15,000 Arab Americans who served in the Army or different branches of the military. We really don't think about Arab Americans in World War II, but you had 15,000 Arab Americans who served during World War II, double that amount who served in Vietnam. And from 1964 to 1975, you had 42,000 Native Americans that served in Vietnam. But the largest minority in 2021 were non-Hispanic Blacks, making up 40.1 million people. 40.1 million people, U.S. population. So apparently the Army, going back to World War II, has been pretty diverse. I mean, how diverse do you want the Army to be? Should we include anybody who wears polka dot purple and green? Getting back to the article, the Defense Department ultimately concluded that the lack of minorities in the officer corps, quote, threatened the integrity and performance of the military. And since the Vietnam War, these service academies have aggressively addressed that problem by considering race along with other qualities in determining who to admit. The admission systems at the service academies are quite different than at civilian institutions, for obvious reasons, with members of Congress, the Vice President, and the President all playing a role in recommending candidates for admission. Okay, so you have Congress involved here, you have the Vice President, the President. So apparently there's a lot of factors that go into selecting these candidates for admission. But the Students for Fair Admission, the same group that successfully sued Harvard and the University of North Carolina, has West Point and other service academies in its sights. Now, this lawsuit was filed in the Federal District Court in New York, and they're thinking this is going to end up at the Supreme Court. But it says in its lawsuit filed Tuesday, it asserts that in recent decades, West Point has abandoned its tradition of merit-based admissions in favor of a system that it claims, quote, is focused on race. West Point has no justification for using race-based admissions, quote unquote, the SFAA asserts, adding that the Academy is not exempt from the Constitution. Can we say 14th Amendment, anybody? So I thought I'd share this with you. Story at NPR. West Point sued by this organization, this fair admissions organization, or Students for Fair Admissions. Story by Nina Totenberg, came out yesterday the 19th. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can also follow me at Instagram, hashtag Jason Composes, because I write music in my spare time. Or you can find me at the new X, formerly Twitter, Culture Confederacy at Culture Confed 1 on X. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out, stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing called the United States. And you know how we do it here. This is where the past crashes with the present. I'll catch you next time, and you all have a great Wednesday.